you get into a conversation with somebody about politics, you're trying to take something that is subjective, relative, and put it into a non-subjective frame of reference. That don't work. And in today's world, there are various political notions, political ideologies, and stuff like that. Not to be preachy and come across as like some kind of fanatic or anything, but I do look to Jesus Christ and God's kingdom as being the true solution to all of mankind's problems. I look at it as being a real government, just as real as the United States, the UK, any other government. It's a real government. It just hasn't taken control over the earth yet. So I don't vote. I don't endorse political candidates. I try to stay as neutral as possible. I have best friends on both sides of that spectrum, and it's good for me. I've considered it very good for me. First of all, it allows me to exercise my neutrality. It allows me to recognize when my emotions are pushing me to support some political group or political candidate or something, and to pull myself back and go, no, listen. It doesn't matter which side they're on. They can't answer the important questions. They can't solve the important problems. Like between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, which one of those two are going to eliminate death and bring all the dead people that you're missing back to life? Which one of those two, Joe Biden or Donald Trump? Neither one, right? Neither one. Which one is going to eliminate hunger across the globe? Which one, Joe Biden or Donald Trump? Neither one, right? Which one is going to make food just so abundant and eliminate all the government and the politics that are getting in the way of people receiving this food? Is it going to be Joe Biden or Donald Trump? Neither one, right? Neither one. So I don't put my hope in Joe Biden or Donald Trump. I put my hope in Jesus Christ. And again, I understand that if you're not a religious person, that sounds very fanatical and everything, and or some of you might be rolling your eyes and saying, well, this guy's crazy. You're welcome to do that. The whole point of this discussion is that I'm just a person. So when I look at policy on the earth now, forget about my beliefs in the future and about the government that will come and replace these governments. When I look at policy, do I see injustices? Do I see, well, I think it should be done this way, and I think it should be done that way? Yes, of course. Of course. I'm just a person, and I'm living right now. So I have my opinions, and I get into these conversations with my buddies. We don't agree on anything. So when I look at a situation, I say, well, Jeffrey, clearly the answer, the proper way to approach this, if we're just talking about a human approach to things, is this. He doesn't agree with me. Doesn't agree with me at all. He says, nope, it's got to be done like this. Last summer, we went on a camping trip to Ohiopyle, Pennsylvania. And he and we got around the fire. Everybody else was asleep, and we got to talking. We were talking about inherent rights. We're butting heads on this topic. I'm getting pretty spirited. He's getting pretty spirited. Anytime your emotions are getting really riled up, you should ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? I always think about working on like an engine. The thing about working on an engine is that if you do it right, things go smoothly. The bolt goes in, the nut goes in, the piece goes into place. The only time you get frustrated is that you're doing it wrong. It's not lined up. The bolt is not lined up. You don't have enough light. These are all the things that say to me, you're doing it wrong. Because if you were doing it right, you wouldn't be feeling this frustration. It always stops me. Nowadays, now it never used to, it does nowadays. That night, having a conversation with old Jeffrey, I felt that frustration, like a piece is not going into place the way it should. And I stopped myself. I said, what am I doing wrong? I let him talk for a little bit, but I was really in my head, and I was thinking, what are you doing wrong? And I said to myself, there has to be a misunderstanding here. There has to be a disconnect. Where I grew up, we have these veal sandwiches, big old piece of veal, about like that big, on a regular hamburger bun. We call that veal. I got to Philly. Everywhere we went, I'd order this veal, and I'd get this slop, like this sloppy, tender, nasty meat. Every time I'd see veal on the menu, I'd order it, and it was not veal. Now, what is wrong with these people? Well, there's a veal that the rest of the world knows, tender calf. If I had known that that's how the world's veal was made, I wouldn't have kept ordering it. But I was thinking it was like the veal from back home. The way it's done back home in Appalachia is it's fried pork. This thin pork meat, and they fry it, and they put that on a bun. We call that veal. You see, the frustration should have been an indication to me. Something's wrong. There's something off. And that should have caused me to analyze the thing to try to figure out what's off. Never did. Not until I moved back to this area. Do you see how there was a perfectly reasonable explanation? If I had understood the two things well, then there would have been no conflict. I wouldn't have kept ordering that stuff out there on the East Coast, and I would have understood why it's so hard for me to find what I'm looking for. Maybe I could have even found what I was looking for out there on the East Coast if I had just ordered fried pork, right? Just give me fried pork on a bun with ketchup, mustard, and pickles, and that'll be close enough. I'll just close my eyes and pretend that I'm eating the veal from back home. So, having this conversation with old Jeffrey, I did that same thing. In my head, something's wrong. Something is off. So I did the most brilliant thing in the entire world. I started asking him questions because I wanted to understand. Jeff, you're saying that there are no inherent rights. Let's say that a right is God-given. Well, he says the Russian government can take that away from you. I said, but that's not it. We're talking about inherent rights. Just because a government puts you in prison for something you're doing doesn't mean that they can take away your right to do it. In his mind, he was thinking of things more in a legal sense. I was thinking of things separate from a legal sense in a universal sense. And that was creating all this miscommunication and misunderstanding, really, because it was getting so frustrating for me to try to tell him, for example, I have a right to believe however I believe about anything. Nobody can take that away from me. They can put me in jail, they can kill me, but they can't take the right away from me. His point of view was that a government in the end can prevent you from practicing that out on the street or those sorts of things. So it really did come down to miscommunication. Once I understood that, I just felt my frustration and anger just go, just right out of my body. All right. Now that I know you and I are talking about two entirely different things, I'm not going to argue with you about which conversation we should be having. I'm just going to say that now that I know the way you're thinking is entirely different from the premise that I'm working from, all right, now I can listen to you and I can refrain from getting frustrated. You see that? I just let him talk and talk and talk. I don't agree with half of it, but I'm not frustrated either because I know where he's at in his head when he's talking about these things is not anywhere near where I'm at in my own head. The frustration is gone because I don't feel like he is now describing the sky as green when I know the sky's blue.